I wanted to curse someone.
You're the golden return, got the strength to carry on, walk on, my child, walk on.
Hello, beautiful soul family. Britt Cannon here, host of the Walk On podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. This week's episode is called, Well, You Gotta Have Faith. You gotta have faith. Well, you gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. And it's about how, just what a profound role that faith has had in my own life, but how my definition or understanding of faith isn't necessarily a religious one, although in some ways that is the case. Like, I do have faith in the universe. I do have faith in my allowing the universe to flow through me. I have faith in the path that has been set before me to walk. As far as my healing is concerned, there's a lot of faith there in the process. There's a lot of faith in my ability to see the higher perspective in things and to find the lesson in a lot of my struggles. But I don't think that that is like a requirement for having faith. And so I really get into all the ways that faith has played out in my lifetime and how when faith leaves me, there is definitely an absence, I feel. There's definitely a grief and a sadness and a kind of hopelessness that sets in that isn't there when I can access faith, when I can feel it. So I talk a little bit about how I had this pretty common reactionary antagonism towards religion, specifically Christianity, in my late teens and early 20s, where I was just like a staunch atheist. I just had no interest in anything woo-woo or spiritual, anything resembling religion. If I heard some of the advice that Christian people give in different contexts, it would cause a reaction in me. It would make me angry. It would make me defensive, and it would hurt me because as like holy and divine and loving as a lot of Christian people see themselves, there is sometimes a lack of empathy or a lack of ability to meet someone where they are. I see this in spiritual communities as well, and like also in my less mature practice. It was definitely there in me too, where like you just want to tell people what works for you without any understanding that where they're at, that might not be helpful advice. And then getting angry at people for having like strong reactions to things that can be hurtful if you're not ready to hear them. And so that's been part of my whole journey, is like learning how to understand what's appropriate and when, and to not get upset or defensive or too frustrated if someone can't handle a piece of spiritual advice that feels invalidating to their pain at the moment. So, but I've definitely been there, and those moments in my life, those times in my life were really hard for a lot of reasons, but for my own personal like mental health and like development and healing, for me to tend to my wounds, there has to be faith present. There has to be hope present. When I think that like nothing happens when we die, that there is nothing bigger than myself, that this feeling of ever expandingness, of like infinity that I have within me, that feels at once a part of my physical body, but also separate from my physical body. When I take the understanding that that is a thing that exists, that consciousness is infinite, that it is a piece of the universe living inside me, when it's just just a sensation that I have in my body, like this existential dread. I feel very claustrophobic in my physical form. I feel very lost. I feel it's really hard for me to like understand the idea that like this too shall pass. You know what I mean? When I'm in that moment, when nothing has any meaning, when nothing has any significance, when it's just like random events happening to us, that is a really tough place for me to live in. I think that that works for some people. I think that makes some people feel better. And I'm not like knocking their way of coping. I'm just saying that for me, that puts me in a really bad place. And it just like starts a chain reaction that can get me pretty deep in a spiral pretty quickly. And I started finding faith through ideas expressed in witchcraft. You know, I tell this story a lot. I picked up that I wanted to curse someone. And I picked up a book about how to curse people. And in the introduction, like the first few pages were all about how, like, if you're buying this book, ready to curse people without doing any of the inner work, you know, if you haven't tried communicating to them, if you haven't tried healing yourself, if this is not your last resort, and if you've skipped over all these other steps, then I suggest you go back and do them and then reassess whether or not you need to curse this person. And it was just like such a harsh call out. It was just like too real, just stabbed me in the chest. And so I started taking that advice, doing my healing, doing my meditating, considering these things, thinking about boundaries, thinking about the role that I played in the mess I was in. And I started seeing over and over again this message, this philosophy, this vibe, this truth that I have some control over what happens to me. I don't have control over everything that happens to me, but I do have this beautiful, divine concept of choice in my life, right? I have free will. And just the growing up in an abusive home, like you're just so powerless. You just have no control over anything. And that desire and need for control to make order out of chaos happens in really subtle and destructive ways, you know, through controlling what I ate and eating disorders, through self-harm, through taking my anger out on others, you know, just like lots of ways this has played out in my life. My longest dalliance with the illusion of control was probably my eating disorder. And second is substance use. And then I had like a really brief, not so brief, but like from ages like maybe 7 to 12, I was like incredibly angry. And I controlled things through that. I've been like really anxiously avoidant in relationships before. You know, like it's played out in all these ways that like it's an illusion of safety I create for myself. Comitophobia is another one, you know, but they don't actually help. And so to come out the other side in my mid-20s to the realization that like, oh, I have a say, I have some control, that is what really paved the way, that knocked down the first few boulders on my path to having faith. And just faith in that fact, you know, faith that I have a say, I have a choice. It's always available to me to change my mind. It's always available to me to correct the course I'm on with new information. And it's always okay to walk away. And like, that's what became this podcast and this channel, is just that truth, that realization that like, oh, I have it within my power to remove myself from things that aren't good for me. I can quit a habit, you know, I can give up being like a party girl and being a part of that party girl lifestyle. I can give up the connection to femininity that has kept me so safe. Or like I can just understand it differently, like more as performance and less as an expectation of myself. Or queerness, you know, I was just like firmly on that straight path relationship escalator thing where I wasn't questioning the choices. I wasn't realizing that a lot of my behaviors and a lot of denial of my true self that I was going through was coming from outside of me. It wasn't choices. They weren't choices I was making. I talk about this in my diet culture and radical self-acceptance episodes, that like even realizing my relationship to my fat body and the way that I hated it was coming from outside of myself. That wasn't a choice that I made about how I felt about my body. That was something someone else put in me. And so I started realizing that like I get to be the authority on my life and how I live my life, what's important to me, what my values are. And that gave me kind of a like staunch faith in myself, you know, faith in my discernment, which takes practice, you know what I mean? For a long time, I was really in fear of attracting abusers because I seemed to have like a big target on me where I just like called abusers to me. And I just really questioned my discernment, and I kept feeling like I was failing, not realizing that recognizing someone as an abuser and getting myself away from them, even if I was friends with them for a year, for 3 months, whatever, that's discernment, right? Realizing that something is wrong is discernment, even if you don't understand it, like even if you don't practice it right away, like even if people get a little too close to you, even just creating the distance and taking care of yourself in that way, laying boundaries with them, like that is the discernment. We're not psychic on that level. You know, you can't just like zero in on someone and see their intentions. And a lot of abusers are like pretty good at the facade. You know what I mean? They're pretty good at pretending. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any relationships. I heard Dr. Ramani once, if you haven't watched her stuff, she's really great. I heard her say that like, you know, or I read it in a book. I read it in, I can't remember if it was The Body Keeps the Score or Why Does He Do That? It was one of those like classic abuse healing self-help books. But they were talking about how like, if an abuser showed up to dinner and was like, yeah, I'm super selfish, I like cheat on all my partners, I'm a liar, I like gaslight, I'm just gonna, you know, abuse the shit out of you and leave you a shell of your former self, like you're gonna be like, okay, next. So there has to be some like some masking going on in order to, that's why the love bombing exists, right? It's the pretending phase, but it can't last forever because it's not real. And eventually that mask slips and then you're left with the real person. And if your discernment doesn't kick in till then, it's not a failure. It's still working, you know, it's still keeping you safe, even if you do get a little too caught up. And with practice, my discernment has gotten sharper and I've gotten more careful with who I trust. And I just remain like a little more, I just take things a lot slower now. I'm not so like desperate for friendship or for love or whatever that I'm just like too open all the time. I definitely like am careful with myself. I protect myself and I have faith in that. Having faith in my path has been a huge thing for me because trying to be an artist, a podcaster, a writer, like all of these things, all of my passions are these like 1 in a million kind of passions. You know what I mean? Like they're the things that when you tell people that that's what you want to do, they like tell you you're being foolish or crazy or delusional. You know, it's just like, it's like, what makes you think you're so special or whatever? Not thinking about the fact that like, these are just jobs like any other jobs. And if you're good at them and you work hard at them, then you should get paid. Like it's, I don't understand the gatekeeping and the like impossibility of some jobs compared to others. It's like if you study something, you go out in the world and you do it, you should get paid. Why does art like not count amongst those things? But you know, there have definitely been moments of financial struggle. There have definitely been moments of feeling like I'm the fool card, you know, just like leaping off of a cliff again and again and again. I have had issues in relationships because of this path. I have, just like sacrificed a lot. Or a more positive way to look at it is I've just like brought many offerings to the altar of this path, and I'm just very committed to it. And it requires a lot, it asks a lot of you. And I have these moments of doubt. I have these moments of frustration. I have these spiraling moments of freaking out where I think nothing's ever going to be good. Nothing's ever going to be better. I'm never going to make it. Maybe I'm not good enough, and that's why nobody watches my videos. But then, on the other hand, I have faith. I have faith in my path. I have faith in understanding that what I do now is what I've always wanted to do, and that has some weight, that has some meaning. And I just trust in the work. I trust in my skills, my qualities, what makes me special. I trust in the work, I trust that I have prepared, that I've studied, that I've practiced. And it's same sort of feeling with like how many times I've started over. Like all of my favorite growth-oriented people have this love-hate relationship with starting over, because the being open to change, being open to growth means that every once in a while you kind of have to blow up your life as you know it. If you've built a faulty foundation, that shit has to crumble before you can move on to the new and the better. And it gets exhausting. It's hard to rebuild from nothing. It's hard to like blow everything up. It's scary. Once again, it's leaping off the cliff. It's going into the unknown, and that's terrifying in many ways. And you do get to a place every single time where you're kind of resisting it, and you're like, oh, I would give anything to not have to rebuild again. But faith in the path, right? Faith in what's happening, faith in the unfolding, faith in the love of myself and the truth that there's better out there for me, that I deserve better, and that I can, better is available to me, If I'm unhappy, walking away and giving myself the opportunity to experience better is a gamble, but it's better than staying put and being unhappy and staying unhappy. And, I think that like the proof is in the pudding. Like you do these things, you trust your path, you follow the guidance, you start over, you tear down and rebuild, and you do the growth thing, and you do the facing your wounds thing, and you do the facing your fears thing. And then it always turns out better than you were expecting. Like it always, for me, I feel like God or the universe or however you want to see it, my higher self, whatever, it has a better understanding and idea and knowledge over what's good for me than I have for myself. I am always shortchanging myself, even just with my relationship. Like the unavailable people that I was always chasing after in my previous life never, ever, ever had the capacity to love me the way my current partner does. But I couldn't even dream that someone would love me this well. I couldn't even dream that someone would like be as excited to be with me as I was to be with them. It was just like not even on my radar. And every day I wake up so grateful that I didn't get what I wanted, because this is so much better. And it's the same thing with like, when I was struggling releasing an album when I was 24, and I was so frustrated that it wasn't doing better. Like if stuff had happened for me back then, I was still drinking too much. I was like hanging out with the wrong people. I was in a relationship that wasn't going to last forever. I was just like not in the best place in my life, and I wasn't as in my integrity. I didn't even have my core values defined for myself back then. So if stuff would have happened to me back then, I would be a much different presence in the world than I am now. And I also feel similarly to the way, like being bullied, like because I was so badly bullied for a lot of my life, by everyone. It's made me like really kind. It's made me really aware. It's made me really loving. It's made me have a deep well of self-love for myself that other people can't touch, which makes me strong and makes me not afraid to put myself out there, because if someone's mean to me, it's like, you can't ever be meaner than like my narcissistic mom or my like middle school bullies. You know what I mean? Anything that you could say to me, YouTube world, it has already been said in much worse ways. So like, good luck. But it's also made me like really committed to my authentic self, because I've had to love myself through the worst of times. I've had to be myself through everyone telling me that was wrong. And so now I'm just like me, and that's pretty powerful. So if all of this sounds like something you'd be into, you can click the link down below to listen to the full episode. And I just like challenge you in the week to come to ask yourself what faith means to you. What do you have faith in? What do you feel, a kind of like slow burn confidence about? Is it your path? Is it your passions? Is it your ability to love yourself? Is it your boundaries? Do you have a relationship that you have a lot of faith in? Like, is it your capacity to love? Like, there's so many ways to have faith that have nothing to do with religion. And if you do have faith in the universe, that's beautiful too. I would love to hear from you. Tell me down below. All the links to all my stuff is underneath in the description. So thanks for sticking around. Talk to you soon. Happy healing. Bye.